So this session is an introduction to components, and basically your action components are your plan of work. It's your work plan is driven by the needs that are unique to your school and your community. So no two centers. You might be, as you're completing your mentoring checklist, going out to different centers and finding out that they're doing some things a little bit different, and that's okay. That's the way Frisky is designed to be, is that you can customize it to what are the driving needs in your school and in your community. So as a coordinator, your role is to primarily carry out this work plan. We are mandated by legislation to address core components. And when you look at your action components, you will see that family resource centers have a separate list of components that they're mandated versus a youth services center, because they have two different ages of populations that they're working with. So those core components for each FRC, YSC, or an FRYSC has to write them all, are not optional. They are mandated by our legislation. But you do have the opportunity, if needs are arising, to write optional components also in your work plan. So in this hour, we're going to build on the foundational frameworks that you just learned about, remembering that I loved how Andrea worded this. All Frisk activities are designed for opportunities to build and strengthen families. I think that should go somewhere in your office where you see it all the time. All Frisk activities are opportunities to build and strengthen families. So we're going to do this in this session by talking through an action component and how it's built and what the elements are. And then the next couple sessions we're going to be doing are deeper dives into each of your components. So next slide, please, Greg. So when you look at your action component, and we picked health services because family resource centers and youth services centers have a health service component that's mandated. You will see at the very top the title for that specific action component. And this one is health services. And then you will see a goal. If it is a mandated component, the goal is automatically going to come up, and you will want to become familiar with what the goal is of each component that you're mandated. If you'll look in your handout, your NCO workbook, it has in here, the very first page is the health services component. And I'm not sure why, but the top part got cut off. Normally it would say health services or referral to health services at the top, and then it would say goal of component. But the goal of the component is to improve the overall health and well-being of students through activities that support whole school, whole community, and whole child. And then it gives you some 10 components that are in this model. Okay, and then you'll notice in the core component, the guidelines below that is a required element for this component. So you must have some type of health prevention activities and services to help remove physical, emotional health barriers to learning. So that is the required element of that component. So each mandated component is going to have a goal that's already written for you. Now, if you are writing an optional component, you will need to name your optional component, and you will also have to write your own goal because it is optional. So, for example, if you were writing for educational support, you would need to write your goal specific to what you plan to do for that component. All right, and next slide, and I believe I'm turning it over to Naila.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Which protective factors will the activity in this component help to build? The next section is where you will click which protective factor that you are addressing in that particular activity or desired outcome. Um, However, and you just learned, this is coming after we did the Strength and Families Protective Factor in the previous framework session. So we are build. If you can see, we're trying to build on, and kind of have some kind of intentionality and order upon building on how you would go about doing your components. So one of the things I want to bring out is that this really, even though it's the next section on the components, is really the last you should probably complete. This should be done after you've reflected back on your activities and determine which protective factor you're going to choose to address. So most likely you will check, as you see on here, there's 3 check. You would check more than one. And then also, I want to put in a plug. We also have the Youth Thrive factors, promotive factors, that will also be included in the new form. So what you're seeing here are the protective factors, but for the youth, they have promotive factors, which are similar, but really target the youth. So that will be in the new form for this next term, I guess, when we start writing our components. So you will see that. And I think there's a question in the chat. Are the youth factors for all FRC, YSC, and FRYSC? The youth factors are for middle through for the YSC. So if you have an FRYSC, you would use the protective factors for the elementary age, and then for middle through high, you would use the youth promotive factors. So I hope that answered Deidre's question. So again, this is a refresher. We just um, talked about the 6 protective factors. We have parent resilience. If you want to click, I think, click if you don't mind clicking. Yeah, there we go. So parent resilience, which means families bounce back after something has a traumatic has happened. They know how to bounce back, and they seek help in bouncing and helping them to get back on track. The next is social connections. Families have friends they can count on. We all need friends, and this is connecting families with families to help one another so they can build on their friends that they can count on. Next, please. Knowledge of child development, and this is also knowledge of youth development. For Youth Thrive, families learn how their children grow and develop, which is very important because you want to have expectations of your child that meet their where they are in their development, and not have high expectations and they just can't meet it because they just haven't grown into that. So that's very important to be able to share with families. Next, concrete support in times of need. We do this very well. We are there. We have, to assist families to meet basic needs. This is one area where, without a doubt, I know you will master if you haven't already done so, given today's time. So, next, social and emotional competence of children. Families teach children how to have healthy relationships. This one again, for some parents don't even have healthy relationships. So this may be something you have to model for children, as well as for adults, because we as adults sometimes don't model healthy relationships. So it's a learning process for everyone. Next is the 6th one that Kentucky has adopted, which was nurturing and attachment, realizing, families ensure children feel loved and safe from birth to adulthood. We all need that, but this is primarily for our early childhood, 0 to 3, for that early brain, which we saw that early brain development. Um, so the hopeful news in all of this is that even if somebody has all I don't think we've gotten there yet, but that's fine. Even if someone has all of these um, adverse childhood experiences, if even if they had all 10 ACEs, if they have these protective factors, then chances are the likelihood that child maltreatment will greatly reduce. And in exchange, the rate of school readiness, children reaching optimal development, and the strength of families will be increased. So I believe next is Sherry.
Hi again. I'm glad to have opportunity to take my glasses off. I couldn't even see very well the last session, so now I'm like, oh, I can see. So obviously, the core of your action component is what the things that you're going to do to meet that component and to meet the needs of your families and children. So we have to start at the beginning, and that is, how do you know what you're going to do? So your needs assessment is key to your action plan, to your continuation program plan. It's key because your action components are built from the results of your needs assessment. So as you're looking at your action component, the next element we're going, your action component form, the next element we're going to talk about is the needs assessment summary box, the needs assessment data summary. So before we talk about that, we're going to start at the beginning, which is the actual needs assessment, which you will do months before writing your action components. So as part of your needs assessment, you'll be gathering data and information from a lot of sources in a variety of ways so that you can get a clear picture of what the true needs are of your school community, your families, your students, your school goals, what those needs are. So looking at the list on the slide, you'll be collecting school data, community data from a variety of sources. You will be collecting data from parents and students and staff in the form of surveys, most likely you will. And also you'll be collecting information through just getting verbal reports and observations from community members, guidance counselors, teachers, food service staff, attendance clerk, whoever. So your needs assessment, and this is the key. Your needs assessment must be the thing that drives the activities and the services that you provide through your center. And this is why we have limited resources, right? We have a limited amount of funds. We have a limited number of volunteers. We have a limited amount of time, and we have a limited amount of energy. So we want to focus all those resources on what's truly needed to help our kids and our families be successful. And that's why our needs assessment is the thing that must drive our action components. Next slide, please. So when you look at one of your action component forms, and you'll see the needs assessment data summary box. And this is the place where, after you do your complete needs assessment, you will put your top needs. It's top needs in a nutshell is what your needs assessment summary, your needs assessment data summary is. It's the results of your needs assessment for each action component. You look at the needs assessment data, the whole picture. You look at your action component goal that Lisa described, and you're going to kind of prioritize and say, what are the needs that bubble to the top for this component? If you're looking at all the information you've gotten about health, or all the information you've got about family literacy, or all the information you've got about substance abuse, what are the top needs that bubble to the top in those components? And that's what goes in that summary. It's not a repeat of the data. It's actually just 2 to 4 bulleted brief statements, bulleted points of what those top needs that have risen to the top. right? We'll give you some examples in the next slide. So your needs assessment. Now these are data statements. So if your piece of data says, according to the KIPP survey, 28% of eighth graders report drinking alcohol in the past 30 days, and 35% of students report vaping regularly. So what would be and let's say you have, there might be other data you have about substance abuse also. So what are the needs that bubble to the top in this data statement? Can you click, Greg? There we go. So obviously a need is you want more prevention activities about alcohol prevention, and you want to decrease vaping. So another data statement, the guidance counselors reported an increase in bullying by fifth grade girls on social media. So what would be the needs, the top needs that you summarize in some brief points that bubble to the top here? Another click. So you want to decrease social media misuse and decrease bullying. According to surveys, 42% of parents and 33% of students indicate a need for more summer activities. That's the data that you've collected. So in summarizing that for a need, our top need is we need more opportunities for summer enrichment. That's your needs assessment data summary. So the next slide is just a visual of how that all plays out and kind of the steps that you take. First, you gather all the data in your big needs assessment. Next, you review all that information and what are the top needs for each action component that you see. Summarize those top needs, and then your actions, your activities, and your services and your programs will be based on those top needs. So that is how that is how we start building that action component.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to make sure I wasn't on mute. Well, my name is Heather McCarty. I am the RPM for Region 2. So I heard you all had a great day yesterday. And so my section is to start talking about the desired outcome piece of your action component. And I feel like this is a really important piece of your component when you're starting to build it. Because what is a desired outcome? A desired outcome is what you want and need to achieve and how you will know that you achieved it. You want to see change and improvement. We, as the Frisk family, we want to see that we made a difference. We don't want to just do the activities that have always been done or that are fun. We want to see change. We want to see that improvement in our families and students. And you can have one desired outcome with several activities to reach your goal. As a matter of fact, you may have 4 or 5 desired outcomes under each action component, but you can have several activities for one desired outcome. Next, please, Greg. So there are quite a few elements to your desired outcome. There's actually 5, and each one of these needs to be included in your desired outcome statement. Number 1, who are your targeted participants? For example, are you targeting pregnant teens? Are you targeting your free and reduced lunch population? Are you targeting grandparents raising their grandchildren? So you want to be specific in your desired outcome about who is your targeted audience, or is it 10 fifth grade boys? Okay, so you want to be specific about that. Number 2, what do you want to accomplish? How do you want them to change? What is your expected benefit from your intervention or activity? So in your desired outcome,
I want to help and have interesting conversations.
That's Siri. Sorry, Siri. And number 3, you must include measurable words. For example, in each desired outcome, you want to have increase, decrease, or improve. And then number 4, include how you will know if your outcome was accomplished. How will you know that a change occurred? For example, you're going to use as measured by, because again, as FRISC, we want to see change. You want to think about what type of data you'll be using, and the division strongly recommends outcome data. So you want to see where your baseline is. Where are you starting with your desired outcome? If you have low kindergarten readiness, what outcome do you want to see? What's the increase? And we want to see that outcome data. After you've done your activity, how will you know that you moved that needle and made a change with your activity? And then number 5, like Sherry was talking about, the desired outcome should be tied to your top needs. For example, Sherry had about parents needing after school activities. So that does not, so if that's one of your top needs, you want to make sure that you have a desired outcome that is related to after school activities or after school clubs. Okay, thank you, Greg. Next one. So here are some examples for your desired activities. On the left-hand side, we have good examples. Number 1, targeted second and third grade students. Basic computation skills will increase according to summer math camp pre and post test. So you see your targeted group, you have what you want to change, and then you also have how you're going to measure that you move the needle. How did you make a change, your pre and post test? Number 2, 8th grade students will gain awareness of real world responsibilities as measured by pre and post activity survey. Number 3, the number of 5th and 6th grade students referred for poor hygiene will decrease from last year's numbers. This will be measured by a daily log comparison. So maybe you're going to look at your daily log from the previous school year. You're going to do some type of activity to address poor hygiene. Then you can look at your daily contact log the next year to see if those numbers went down. And that's a great example for an impact report. You saw change. You moved that needle. You did make a difference. And the 4th one, 10 targeted students will have fewer office referrals for behavior as determined through IC behavior data. And so on the right-hand side, we have some that are not desired outcomes. There are some pieces in there, but as I read through them, if you don't mind to put in the chat what is missing from that example. So number 1, all parents will gain knowledge about the FRISC. So what are we missing in that desired outcome statement when you're creating your action component? What kind of parents? So we're not really hitting a targeted group. Yes, teacher, how it will be measured. Thank you. The how, the measured. And how do we know if we do an activity for parents to gain knowledge about the FRISC, if we just give them a FRISC brochure, how do we know they gain that knowledge? How do we know they read the brochure? How do we know that now they know what the FRISC is? So thank you all for that. Number 2, all students will know how to read on grade level. Again, what are we missing in that desired outcome? All students will know how to read on grade level. Who are the all? What are they doing to measure this? As measured by, how? Great, you guys are doing great. You guys got this. Number 3, the coordinator will host a parent cafe once a month during the school year. What are your thoughts on that? The coordinator will host a parent cafe once a month during the school year. Is that a desired outcome? What is the change you're expecting? Really, if you all think about it, this is an activity. So we don't even have a desired outcome in this statement because we're talking about what we're going to be doing. So really, this is an activity. There's nothing really in there about our targeted group. There's not a measuring statement, and we're not talking about what we want to see change. So good job, you guys. And then lastly, students will be informed on the dangers of drugs, alcohol, or using electronic smoking devices. So if you will include that in the chat for our last one. Students will be informed on the dangers of drugs, alcohol, or using electronic smoking devices. What are they doing to teach this? Which students and how are you going to measure? Very good, you all. Very good. That's great. Targeted group of students. Yes. And there will be times that you are just giving out information to students. That will happen. But if substance abuse is one of your top needs, like Sherry was saying, you want to have a specific desired outcome of how you want to see change. So thank you all. And I think we're moving on to Andrea.
Yes, it's my turn. We're going to talk about activities. So there we go. So to keep in mind how this process should progress, it will help you produce much better components. You've got your needs assessment, then you kind of do your data summary to figure out what those top needs are. Then you're going to figure out what your real main outcome is. What do you want to happen? How are you going to move the needle? So once you've got that desired outcome, then you get to the part where we think about what activities we want to do. And I hate to say it, but a lot of times this process will work in reverse for people when they don't carefully plan it out. They'll say, oh, let's have a reality store. Okay, I'm going to do that. Well, why are we doing that? And then they'll make up the reason for why they're doing that. So hopefully when we start big and then funnel down to our activities, we get really meaningful activities that are going to incorporate those protective factors and are really going to help eliminate barriers to learning. So what do we want to do? What is the explicit activity that the center is going to provide, coordinate, collaborate, facilitate, or offer that will help to achieve our desired outcome? What is the activity going to be? And then our activities should be conducted by the center or in collaboration with other school or community partners. So if this is something that really your guidance counselor has already been doing for 3 or 4 years and you haven't been a part of planning and you're just going to show up and man a table, that's not really your activity. You can do that. You can provide information. You can hand out information. You can do a survey. But if it's not really your activity, then it doesn't really belong here. It's okay to participate, but it shouldn't really be a core part of your program plan. And each activity should be listed separately. Heather was talking to us about you could have many desired outcomes. Sometimes you might have one desired outcome with many, many activities for that component. It could be there's only one big overreaching desired outcome, but then you're going to do 4 or 5 things to help achieve that. So you'd have the same desired outcome on your form, and then you would have several activities. We never put more than one activity in a section because that's makes it hard for us to gauge whether we were able to complete that or not. So you'll always list that desired outcome again, and then one activity, and the desired outcome, and then another activity. So in our activity, it's important to know who is the targeted audience. Who's the group we're going to invite? You know, our whole school may be who we're targeting in our desired outcome, but to get to that, we may have a summer math camp for 5th grade boys. We might have a summer activity for 4th grade girls. So you're going to say exactly who it is you're going to invite to participate in this activity. It might be the grandparents in a social support group for them. But again, we want that kind of contained so we know who's going to benefit. Just for some activity examples there, we've got 5th grade GPS students, relative caregivers, area child care providers, rising kindergarten students. So whoever that is, we want to be sure we name them so that it makes it identifiable. And then when are we going to do this activity? And if you look at your components that you had pulled up, you should be able to see. Over the years, we've had some discrepancies here. It's important that we realize that the timeline for the activity needs to occur during the funded grant cycle. So our grant cycle that we're in right now began July 1st of 2020, and it's going to run until June 30th of 2022. That's this grant cycle. So all of the dates for what we're doing right now should fall in that grant cycle. If it's something that you're going to do the whole time, if it's a resource and referral kind of opportunity that you're going to offer to everybody who comes in your center, then that timeline might be June 30th or July 1st, 2020 to June 30th of 2022, if it's going to be something that truly is going to happen during all that time. But many of your targeted activities are only going to occur part of that time. It might be the fall of 2021. It might have been the spring of 2021 and the fall of 2021. It just depends on what your activity is going to be. So, what we want to be sure is incorporated there, it's a finite amount of time. We don't want to see ongoing. We don't want to see school year. We want to see dates that match the cycle of your grant. And so, important to know, we just want to remind you, we realize you did not write the components you're looking at right now, and there could be mistakes. That's okay. We're going to figure out how to fix those, how to make them better. That's why we're here. So, Greg, you can advance us again. And the next thing we're going to look at, the next section of your grant or your activities, and then you're going to have your collaborative partners. And the collaborative partners will be listed per activity. So they should correspond to whatever that activity you have listed. List the persons or entities that are collaborating with the center to provide each activity. Could be fourth grade teachers, could be public library staff, could be the food pantry staff, high school athletic director, whoever it is that's going to help you conduct that activity. I just like to list them all there. In the event that you're coming in behind somebody who has written this grant previously, you're going to save them a lot of legwork to try to figure out who they're supposed to contact. If I've got Reality Store listed in my grant and then I don't have over there for collaborative partners, that area is blank, I don't even know who to start asking who we're supposed to be doing this with. In my school, I would have known that it was my area 4-H agent, that she always helped us, that it was the FNET program, and that my guidance counselor was going to help to collaborate that. So when you've got those entities listed over there, you're saving yourself some legwork. And then if somebody else needs to pick it up and figure out what they're going to do, they're saving them some legwork too. And then the final little column there for right now is your fund source amount. How's this going to be funded? Some activities are truly no cost. So that's okay. It can be no cost, but there might be somebody contributing time or goods. Reality Store might not have cost me anything, but that extension agent is going to donate several days of her time trying to get it all coordinated and to help us conduct it. So I might list a value on her time. I might list a cooperative extension, $400. It could be that the church down the street is going to donate a place for us to conduct this activity. And even though they're not giving us money, that's an in-kind contribution that we're not having to pay for. So I might list Southeast Christian and list $300 as a reasonable rental amount to be in that. So again, it's just to kind of indicate what it is that's being donated. Again, to give a clear picture of what you're planning to do, but also if somebody else needs to figure out what's going on there, it gives them an option too. Your FRISC grant could certainly be listed here. If it's something that you're going to pay for supplies or items or pay a community person to come in and do, then you could list FRISC grant there and the amount it's going to be. If you're going to get a grant from Community Collaborations for Children to conduct an off-site parenting program, and that amount's $500, then you'll put that in there. It's important to know that these amounts do not have to completely correspond to what you're showing in your budget. If in your budget, it doesn't necessarily say that you've got Community Collaborations for Children or that you're going to spend $400 in supplies for Girls on the Run. It's okay. This is just the framework that you're going to be working within to help produce the activity. So don't go back and try to make those numbers completely match. That's not a part of your time that has to happen right now. This again is just about giving the overview of your activity and the people involved and what you're hoping to achieve. And now I believe Heather's going to come back with us to lead us into our activity.
That's the best slide yet.
I love him.
So yes, now we're going to put everything that we just learned into practice. So Greg is going to break us into groups. We have a group of FRCs, YSCs, and we're going to actually go together in our groups and we're going to build our own component based on some information. And we're going to use our health services component, and the information will be there for us. So as a group, you're going to practice doing this on your own, but you'll also have an RPM in your group to help you.
Mute. Okay, so there are going to be 3 links appearing in the chat. Okay, so the first 2 are going to be data sheets, and so that's going to be the data that you're going to use in your activity. So let me go ahead and start sharing all this stuff as I'm talking. And so here is the FRC data link. And what you, like Heather just said, you're split into 6 groups. There are 3 groups that are going to be FRC groups. There's 1 group that's going to be an FRYSC group. And district contact is going to be in with you guys. And then there are 2 YSC groups. So here is the YSC data form. Sorry, these are all separate shares, so I have to do them each separately.
And I would love to add that we haven't always had this presentation. We've recently created it to help coordinators build their action components. And I just think it's so beneficial and effective for us to use this now and actually put it into practice before, when we didn't have a specific activity and presentation on how to build those action components. And it helps new coordinators know that you don't always have to do everything that's been done in the past. You can change it now. You'll be doing your needs assessment surveys very soon, and you'll be able to change your activities and make it your own for your center based on what you all need. And then in your group, be sure to have someone who is a recorder and then someone who will report out when we come back to share.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. So you, I don't know whether when you're in the breakout rooms, and Russell, you could probably help me on this one, or anyone. I don't know if you'll be able to see the chat. So what you might want to do right now is go ahead and access the chat if you're an FRC or a YSC. For FRYSCs, did we make a determination of which one they should do? Whether they should do YSC or FRC?
That could be, they could choose when they get in their group.
That's great. Well, and actually, let's see. I'll tell you who's in that group. To give yourselves an option. So in the FRYSC group, Abby, if you could, Abby and Alicia, if you could pull up the FRC sheet, and Cheryl and Greta, if you could pull up the YSC sheet, that group will have, there's a couple other people in there too, that group will have access to both of them. And then the final link that I've put in is a Google worksheet. And so pay attention as you're going into your breakout groups. It's going to give you a number. Groups 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the FRC groups. Groups 4 and 6 are the YSC groups, and group 5 is going to be the FRYSC group. So pay attention to which group you're in, and then when you get into your group, the recorder needs to pull up that Google Sheet, and then you're going to have tabs down at the bottom of the screen. Tabs, and actually there's tabs for about 10 groups. So just find your tab. So if you're in the FRYSC group, you're going to be in group 5. And so just pull up tab 5, and you will be completing the action component form for your group. And then we'll come back and we're going to have a report out. Okay, I know that was a lot. So before I send you off to groups, any questions? I know that was as clear as the mud that they're cleaning out of poor Eastern Kentucky right now. So, all right, I don't see anything in the chat. If you do have any trouble, there is a button that you can call the host into your room, and I'll be happy to pop in and give you any help that I can. So without further ado, these groups are for how many minutes?
Let's see.
Let's say, well, we originally said 20, but we don't have that much time. So
Yeah.
let's say 15, and
15.
then we'll.
Okay, 15 it is. All right, everybody, have a very productive session. Introduce yourselves quick and then get right to work. And we'll be actually be able to watch your work from here in the main room. Welcome back. So for those of you watching online, what you missed was a 15-minute breakout where our groups actually did the work of filling out an action component form. So, and they're about to do report backs. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so you notice that the screen has changed, and so here is the actual worksheet, and we realized that was probably really rushed and probably not as much time as you needed, but we do see a lot of work, and so I'm sharing the report out screen, and I will let one of your fine RPMs lead through this. Are we just going to have each group report out?
Just and in the interest of time, maybe 2 groups or 1.
Okay. Well, why don't we do
Let's
one of
one
the
FRC, one YSC.
That's good.
Super. Okay. So do we have a volunteer from groups 1, 2, or 3 who would like to share your results? We're looking at group 1 right now on the screen.
We were actually group 1, but when we got in there, somebody else was typing in group 1.
Okay.
So we ended up typing on sheet 3.
Oh, oops.
Oh.
And
That looks
so
like our group.
there you are. There, you're the one that was typing on our sheet.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry. When we got in there and somebody else was typing in our sheet, I said, well, let's look for the sheet that it looks like nobody's typing in. So we went over there because we assumed they were in our sheet. Sorry. Maybe we can collab. Well,
No problem. No problem.
and actually, that doesn't look like what we typed either.
Okay, so let me ask this. So let me pull the sheet up that I had before. This is from a YSC middle group. So somebody from this group.
That's our group, Greg.
Okay, Heather, why don't you talk first?
Okay,
or somebody in your group.
Okay, I'll finish because we were, like you said, we were rushed and we were trying to think through it. So we chose to decrease emotional stressors among students because we saw anxiety as one of the top 3 social and emotional issues reported by staff, students, guidance counselors, and the nurse. So our desired outcome was incoming freshman students will have decreased anxiety when transitioning to high school as measured by student surveys. And our first activity was that YSC will provide mental health coping materials during freshman orientation. And then we also talked about, we didn't get to the timeline, but I would say that would be fall of 2021, because we were also going to talk about the YSC being involved with the freshman orientation, actually the day of, maybe walking freshman students around. So we were going to add a couple more activities to go with that one desired outcome. And our timeline would have been fall 2021. And then great job. I think it was Danita. She was adding some more in there. She's going to collaborate with the YSC middle and high school staff, guidance counselor, AmeriCorps coach. And then she added her fund source of $200. So great job, Danita. Thank you for recording for us.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much. And you guys were one of the YSC groups. So
Yes.
Would one of the FRC groups like to go? Let's see. Who's on group 2? Oh, I don't see much there.
You could go to group 5. We were the frisky group, but our original needs assessment data summary we picked was increased. We noticed there was an increased social emotional issues in students. So we decided one of the things that we wanted to do was to increase mental health awareness in students K through 8 as measured by pre-post surveys. And we thought the same thing. We were going to design a couple different activities because K8 is a wide range. We were going to do activities for primary, intermediate, and then our middle school kiddos. So, but we ran out of time. So our first activity we thought would host a program for K through 3 students on social emotional health. And since we just threw March out there because we thought that was Mental Health Month. So we were going to highlight it March 2020 and March 2021 since we run on a 2-year grant cycle. And then our collaborative partners, what was suggested from the coordinators were their mental health professionals that are in their school. So Mountain Comp and Kentucky River.
Super. Well, thank you. All right. So I think, do we have anything else from the group or any other comments or thoughts?
I want to let you know that our group was trying very hard. We were typing and there's some technical difficulties. So I told them not to fear. We would work through it. So.
And we totally understand that. And that's, all of this is just practice. So.
For all the groups that did not get to finish, hopefully that you saw by those two really good examples of the people that did get to finish of how an action component gets built and where you start, and then the flow of needs to desired outcome to activities to who you're going to pull in to partner with. So thank you.
All right, super. Well, thank you, everyone. Okay, so let me just quickly put up our schedule for today. So that does wrap up our first 2 sessions. We are going to take a 15-minute break, 11-minute break. We're going to get back on schedule at 11:15 for a deeper dive into actually working with these components. So without further ado, that concludes this portion, and we'll see you back at 11:15 Eastern, 10:15 Central.